Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The Daily Ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing The Man Who Fell from Earth, directed by Nicholas Roeg, Brazil by Terry Gilliam, Possessor by Brandon Cronenberg, we have newly released Mad God by Phil Tippett, and finally, Crimes of the Future, directed by David Cronenberg. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Thomas Recker, how's it going?
It's going well for me. How was your spooky week, it looks like?
Man.
Your creepy, spooky week.
You know, in the business, we say one for you, one for me. 6 Jurassic Park movies. I get to watch the movies I want for a week. So,
I mean, I knew about Crimes of the Future, and other than that,
Yeah.
I'm just looking at some of the stills and just the short little clips of these films, and it looks bonkers.
what says Father's Day? Like body horror and science fiction. You know?
And I didn't know about Brandon Cronenberg, Cronenberg's son, and he is right in his father's footstep when it comes to weird.
Absolutely, almost to the point that the films are the film is very reminiscent of that, like early Cronenberg work that we even covered on the podcast. Like Scanners specifically was very reminiscent.
That's pretty cool, really.
Absolutely, I was impressed with it. So
okay, so we're going to start with a movie that I have never heard of. And it stars
David Bowie.
David Bowie. We're going back to 1976. The Man Who Fell from Earth.
Yeah, so this is from a 1963 novel of the same name. This film has been floating on my watch list forever, primarily for the kind of the novelty that it's David Bowie's first leading role in his acting career. I mean, he's been in a handful of things, of course.
Yeah.
His first kind of big breakout and really defined by David Bowie specifically. So I thought that was interesting.
Does this have anything to do with... I don't know like I said, I don't know anything about it, but just The Man Who Fell from Earth. Did this kind of help his persona of Starman?
Oh, right. Ziggy Stardust.
Ziggy Stardust?
I mean, it's not connected to those personas, but definitely could play into the
very
marketing.
Bowie. The whole thing is very Bowie.
It's very Bowie, absolutely.
All right, so what do we have even remotely
I mean, as far as this story, there's also a new interpretation of the story right now in show form on Showtime. I have some mild curiosity there, but that's if I have any time to watch a show, because there's plenty of movies to watch always. So, this movie definitely rocks. It is really got this larger than life soundtrack. There is 7 sex scenes. It's super trippy. It's just very 70s.
Okay.
Extremely 70s, 60s film. If anything, holding a lot. I've never read the novel from 63, but even with a good 10 plus years later, it feels like there's a lot there that this film just has 60s sensibility to it. Like I said, it definitely rocks. Maybe not the best thing or the most timeless thing for that reason.
Yeah, because it being very 70s, it being very 60s, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to take seriously in parts for that reason as well. But, sometimes those time capsules work. I think, generally speaking, this does work. And primarily it's because I think the film probably had a lot of budget restraints and is still trying to tell a sci-fi story. So we experience the science fiction instead of prop work or set work or special effects through different means. And I
Okay.
think that's creative, for instance.
So the man who fell from Earth, what exactly were we getting? Because one can
Yeah.
only can assume
Right.
the main premise.
Yeah. So basically, it is an alien that falls to Earth. This is played as cool as ice, David Bowie. I mean, he is just such a presence on screen.
Okay.
Really cool. This alien falls to Earth. We don't even necessarily see the impact directly, and his goal is to very simply get back to his home. What's brilliant about this film, and definitely the main highlight, is that we experience this film through the alien's heightened experiences, through its heightened visual and audio type of processing of how he experiences life on Earth. So there's a big stream of consciousness. Sometimes we're zooming into cattle driving by. The other times we're jumping forward 15 years in technology. It's all over the map.
Okay. Is it like first person? Like, are we inside? Like,
No.
is the camera acting as David Bowie's eyes at times?
No. More so in just how certain scenes are portrayed.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And David Bowie does a pretty decent job. In addition to David Bowie, we have the actor Rip Torn, who we'll know from Men in Black. He's the who is the commissioner? He's not K. I forget his single letter.
Yeah.
It's
I think
KJ.
We know him as K,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I don't know. I think Tommy Lee Jones is K.
So he's J?
No, he's the big commissioner.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Rip Torn.
He's not. Isn't he also the in Dodgeball? He plays the drunk coach.
I think so. Yeah. It's been a minute
That's
since
what I know
I
him
saw
as.
Dodgeball. I guess Dodgeball's on the coming week.
Yes, it better be. But anyway, Rip Torn is in it.
Yeah, and he's basically our main supporting. He plays a professor and kind of gets obsessed with Bowie as this. You know, he's not known to be an alien. He assumes life as a engineer, a businessman, and is radically changing society around himself because he's clearly at such a higher level as an alien.
okay.
He's creating new things. He's developing patents. He's making a huge amount of money, and there's a lot of enjoyment in that. And then through Rip Torn's character's eyes, we kind of get obsessed with Bowie's character, but also try to unravel how is this man, being so prolific
Right.
and revolutionizing things around him. So there's some pressure from the state for that reason. They think he's a spy. There's a lot of predictable elements there, but it's all enjoyable. The highlight is because we experience what presumably the alien experiences, which is this stream of conscious jumping around, and not many things are meaningful to him. And the
Okay.
camera is only on certain things. It's only on things that really stand out to him among the main mundaneness of human life, which is an interesting way to cast a sci-fi. It's a cool storytelling.
Yeah, and a
technique.
different way to shoot it as well. And just cinematography holds up.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
That's the main brilliance. It's in two ways. The pacing is very demanding. It's stream of conscious. A perfect example of this, we go from, in the very beginning, from a crash landing to him being a hobo scrounging for cash to then him in a full suit talking to patent lawyers about something revolutionary tech-wise.
Okay.
So that's quite literally the progression of scenes, which is demanding. It's
Yes.
like, what the hell is going on? But these are the small moments that matter to the alien because they're actually significant.
Yeah.
So
Okay, that's pretty cool.
yeah, and there's big time jumps as well in that.
Okay, and is it breezy for that reason? It's 2 hours and 19 minutes, so it's a little lengthy, but does it move at a good clip?
It does. There's a lot of fat to be trimmed, and we'll get into that in a second. There's a lot, like I said, it's a very 70s, this movie rocks, but is a little goofy for that
all
reason. Another way that we experience this, this sci-fi through the alien's eyes is there'll be jumps of times where he's just surrounded with new tech. People have aged out of nowhere. I mean, we're talking like a scene that someone is like 20 years old, and then the next scene they're like 35. So there's a weird stream of consciousness that it maybe feels disconnected, but we're really only dipping into the story through the alien's eyes, which I think is just such a cool way to present this. This is a sci-fi not because of we see a lot of blasters and space and technology. No, it's a sci-fi because this is how an alien is processing human experience in a way.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And it's something
very
different and unique.
Oh, extremely unique. We always talk about with sci-fi, I'm always hunting for that next Solaris. I'm always hunting for, the next deep cut sci-fi.
Why has this been the diamond in the rough completely?
Exactly.
Where has this been in all of sci-fi?
Exactly.
Why is this not a bigger movie? Okay.
This week, again, this was on my list forever. Want to give it a shot. So, the camera work is very bold. It's very 70s. There's kind of no rules to it. That we're zooming around everywhere. It's very 70s. But I think again, it illustrates the heightened senses, the heightened vision, the heightened sound, and is very trippy in ways intentionally because the film's goal is trying to almost put us in the front seat or put us in the shoes of the alien, like you were saying, first person. What is this? How would this alien experience human society at the time then? So I gotta say, the B plot with Rip Torn is a little bit confusing at the start of it. He's basically crossing paths with Bowie's company, the aliens company, through kind of an obsession, but he's a professor just having sex with students like left and right. There are like 7+ sex scenes in this. And listen, I'm no prude, but it was like at the 7th, it was honestly, it was just like,
it was just ridiculous.
This is
some of the fat that can be cut.
Yeah. And like I said, this movie definitely rocks, but it's come on, it's a little hard to recommend when so much time is just dedicated towards these scenes with music. It's a very heavy soundtrack.
Is that what you kept on saying? It rocks?
Yeah.
Okay.
It rocks because it's just trying to have a good time.
Okay, all right.
There's obviously, soundtrack-wise, I would imagine David Bowie has an influence to the soundtrack choices and these trippy sections. There's a lot there. But 30 minutes in, I gotta say, this film was a tough pill to swallow because the Bowie sections are very interesting, but this B plot with Rip Torn, he's just having sex with his students. And it's like, why are we focusing on this?
Like not adding to the story of any importance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bowie's having fever dreams, seeing him in these relationships with his students.
Okay.
It's a little tough, to follow along. But I would just say the sex scenes themselves, I think it plays into the message this film has that there's a fascination with society at the times. This is supposed to be either 60s or 70s.
It's shining a light on the sexiness of 70s.
Exactly.
And such the Renaissance going on, I guess you could say. Yeah,
exactly. In that, I think it's an interesting time capsule. Does it make for a great movie? Does it make a movie that you could definitely trim some fat? Sure. I mean, I think even with, again, we're talking 7+ scenes dedicated to this.
And it's 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Exactly. So I think by that 7th one, I was like, wait, again?
Yeah.
So I get it, But yeah, I think that's where it's a little bit hard to recommend in modern day. We're definitely having the time capsule element is a positive to it, but it's also kind of hurting its rating as far as what I'm going for, if that makes sense.
I think that, it should.
Yeah.
It should.
I think my dream project here would be a ultra slimmed down version of it, focus more on Bowie being this prolific businessman, this engineer, developing patents, and humanity just scratching their head and saying, how do we keep up with this guy? This guy is a, huge revolutionary to society itself. His company is developing new processes and really taking over everything. So when it comes to that, I think there is some morbid curiosity, like I said, again, even post-watching this, of that Showtime show. I think there could be, it's a really novel concept to have this alien come, and guess what? He's now taking over society itself.
You can absolutely stretch that for seasons as well.
Exactly.
And just build on that plot.
Right.
Okay.
And that's aside from the actual sci-fi nature of him trying to get back to his home planet.
Right.
So I think there was a lot here to love. Again, without many special effects, we have, or without many special effects doing the heavy lifting like a sci-fi story would.
Right.
We have this film being very unique in trying to craft an experience through aliens' eyes, and I think certainly, while this is a unique film, there's a bit too much fat to trim. I think that kind of levels out my love for this, but I think this was very stylized and a good time. We're going to go ahead and give The Man Who Fell to Earth a 68.
Oh, 68. That's a pretty damn good score.
Absolutely. I think it's so unique for how they decides to present, this experience.
And it's not the shooting of the film isn't so. Is it like again some of these stills and some of those short videos? It looks crazy.
Even Men Who Fell from Earth.
That's what I'm saying. Yes,
really?
That's what I'm talking about specifically.
You're referring to some of the other movies.
Well, that too. But it keeps it together enough, even for a modern day watch. Those 70s shots, where it's like bleed 70s. It's still so. It's really.
I like
okay.
the trippiness because the trippiness always has kind of either social commentary or and I kind of like that.
It puts you in the atmosphere too.
Yes.
Of weird. And it's a sci-fi, too.
Absolutely. And, as far as the alien itself, he is weird,
Yeah,
so I think it's some good follow-through. I think follow-through would be the word I would want to describe its style with substance.
Okay. Very good. And a 68, I think, marks that just fine.
Yeah, and certainly we will talk about style and substance pretty much in every entry, whether they do that well or not. So.
Okay, all right. Well, let's go on to wacky film number 2, I guess. Again, a film I don't think I've heard. No, I did. I have heard about this before in just like past research or something like that. This is now 1985 that we're in. The film is just called Brazil. The director is Terry Gilliam. I don't. What is this about?
Sure, yeah. And what I can say out of the gate is that in a lot of spaces, this film is considered or referred to as a masterpiece in sci-fi dystopia.
Oh, really?
Yes. And this was on my list forever because I look at this and I say, is this really a masterpiece? So I was excited to dive into this one.
And like fresh eyes. Like not even years ago have seen it. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is fresh out of the gate. I think a great way to introduce this film is through the director, Terry Gilliam's work. His work includes Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Complete 180 to 12 Monkeys, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So a common factor in all of those is that very, very different genres a lot of the times, but there's always a comedic spin. And there's always a dash of the surreal in these films. And I think that is the elevator pitch here. It is sci-fi, it is dystopia, it is surreal, but it is also probably the big umbrella genre is a comedy first, honestly. It is
really?
It is
the
very British in its comedy and
so can I just run I'm really impressed by the cast.
Yes.
Like really impressed. We have Jonathan Pryce, I'm assuming is playing the main.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then there's Robert De Niro, Katherine Hellman, who plays Deborah's mom and Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
And then my boy and then Ian Holm.
Yep. Ian Holm's great.
So the cast is huge.
Oh yeah. And everyone is really, playing. Maybe Ian Holm is playing into more of his kind of manic, Yeah, and honestly reminded me of his character in Big Night a little bit.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. But like, talk about showing some range for Robert De Niro. I mean, this is a very unconventional role for Robert De Niro, and he's great in it.
You don't think Brazil and Robert De Niro. Again, I never really. I had no idea.
Yeah. I gotta say, though, eyes on this film. This film is phenomenal.
Really?
I was in love. And believe me, I was going in, if anything, kind of like, all right,
skeptical.
Yeah.
If it's so good, why have I not seen this?
Exactly. Yeah. Bingo. Nail in the head, Tom. Brazil is like a satire George Orwell story. Think like 1984 run by morons. And that's where a lot of the comedy
comes from.
Yeah, exactly. The bureaucracy is at the level of total government opposition or oppression, but literally everyone's an idiot. So that is really the elevator pitch for this, and I think it executes great on it. When it comes to this, it really makes a funny film, but like most satire, really does have some bite. We follow Sam Lowry, played by Jonathan Pryce, a pencil pusher in the Ministry of Information. Sam is bored to tears with his life, and primarily this film has an A-plot dealing with the reality of the Ministry of Information and Ministry of Truth and very 1984 style concepts, and then daydreaming about a noble quest that we actually see him kind of being pushed into delusions, pushed into adventure by this, and very interesting because we have a very sci-fi plot in A plot. And B plot, when we go to daydreaming inside Lowry's head, it really turns into a full-on fantasy, and it's just like, wow, this is just juggling so much. It's a very impressive film for that reason.
And it's balancing it well. It's dancing along that edge of the knife.
Absolutely. Cool. I think, honestly, what makes it digestible is that it is a comedy. We're never in the point that we're taking it too seriously. If you go into this and you understand that it's all good for some jokes, even as drastic as some style turns may be, it's all kind of for a joke. It's all for this kind of satire of George Orwellian kind of state society.
Okay.
So, yeah, it is very interesting. I mean, these delusions really drive Lowry into a lot of situations. Every situation has a procedure. Every procedure has paperwork. It's extremely bureaucratic. I think that's really where the comedy is so British around it, because it just feels not Monty Python-esque, but I guess for a lack of a better description, that's kind of in the same way. It's dry humor, but they're. I'm not slapping my knee over this thing, but it is all very consistently funny.
It's very humorous. Exactly. It's a humorous film.
Perfect.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Absolutely. My recommendation for this one boils down, though, to the visual design. It is a must-see. I really want to condense this because I can go on and on about the visuals in this film. I loved it. I loved it. Amazing sets. I kid you not, the tech is perfectly stylized. There's such a relentless design everywhere. None of it looks dated because every inch of this world is designed for this satire. It's designed to deliver kind of a visual comedy to the world.
Right. It's building a world and it's playing in that world.
Exactly.
So it's like believable in a sense.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's believable in the type of jokes they want to tell. Their computers are typewriters, but they have little screens and magnifying glass over the little screens, and everyone's squinting and trying to, the computers don't work well. Almost every shot looks like a futuristic Art Deco painting. Cinematography-wise, we're always shooting our characters looking up at them. So we get these great shots of just... We really appreciate the architecture of this sci-fi world. I mean, there's a lot of miniature work done here. It is very, very impressive and just a delight to watch. We also familiarize ourselves with this totalitarian world through posters on the walls and propaganda. And there's always a cartoonish joke to each one of these posters in how this world works. Report on your friend. Don't think, report. There's things like
fun.
that.
Yeah.
But it's just why I put so much credit into it is just it is relentless. It is over every inch of this film. There is not a single mundane shot or set
it is
that
all
isn't
detailed and careful.
Oh yeah,
this is what you love about Verhoeven, with world building.
Oh, absolutely.
And they just did it in spades here.
Absolutely,
that's great to see detail down to those things. Posters in the background. That's what makes a film. That was what would make it for me, or put it over the edge at least.
Yeah, and more than anything, I think where this even steps apart from someone like Verhoeven, it's not being pushed in your face like a commercial like Verhoeven would use.
Sure, yeah.
It's there if you want it, and I think that's a lot of the subtle brilliance of this film. It's there if you want to appreciate it.
The keen eye will reward you even more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, just the dream sequences is going to top off what I'm talking about visually here. Sam dips in and out of daydreaming throughout this film, and it, like I said, it almost turns from a sci-fi to a fantasy. And you'd think that in a lesser film I would say, oh, this is whiplash, this feels terrible,
right,
back and forth for how drastic things go. It is because every inch of this film is designed. There's not a single mundane set that when we go to sci-fi to fantasy, it's on the same level of production, and it really just melds so well. There's follow through on that design of the film, which is
it's dedication to the idea of the film.
Oh yeah,
and to the spades, it sounds like.
Absolutely,
which is awesome.
If my pitch for it, I mean, for a story about daydreaming, the dreamlike features of this film are flawless. It really is great.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I was, folks at home, I told Tom, I watched two movies this week twice, and Brazil was one of them, and well deserved. I was very, very pleased with this. I'll move along quickly because I don't want to rant forever, but let's talk about some of that cast. Standout is absolutely Robert De Niro. He plays like a mechanic vigilante. Like,
I love it.
Because, like, the state runs everything, Lowry has a problem with his air conditioner unit. And Robert De Niro plays Harry Tuttle, who is like this mechanic vigilante. He's just like, yeah, I'll do the job for free. Just don't call the state. Okay. It's fantastic. He's so good.
That's awesome.
And he's like, it's totally enjoyable. Like not a De Niro character. Like it's
no, to be in a movie like this, absolutely not. Yeah. It's never talked about.
I know.
Is his percentage in the film not that much?
Not that much. He's more of like a punchline. He'll just show up out of nowhere.
Okay. Is he in this more than what he was in The Untouchables?
Because actually, yes.
And in The Untouchables, he made his impression with being in like
2 scenes, 3 scenes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So bigger percentage than that.
And obviously, folks, take a look at the must-watch section. De Niro obviously is a fan fave, so maybe there's some bias there. But he really does play. I was surprised just how much of a non-role De Niro would.
It's like he had fun with it too, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good to know.
Like I said already, Ian Holmes, great. He plays kind of a emotionally abusive boss, but then is needing support emotionally. Like it's very manic. It's great. Most of all, the character writing is on point. Our main lead, Sam, is a bureaucrat. He solves problems by being a bureaucrat. Mm-hmm. He's in a tough spot. He's like, do you have a receipt for that? Do you have a section form for this? And it works. We go back to Jurassic Park review. I mean, scientists being scientists in the scene. Yeah. He's a bureaucrat. He solves problems as a bureaucrat, which is awesome. It's just very good writing. I think part of the reason why we see him daydream so much, and this being the B plot, is because he's having these delusions of grandeur because the world is just tied down to such a monotony.
Okay.
He really does hate the world he's a part of, and I think maybe that could be said. Hey, that's kind of the plot of any kind of 1984 style story, but it's done so well because it's all for a comedic spin. It's really, really great.
Okay.
I would say the depiction of the future is relentless, really hits on a lot of great points, constant stimulus as far as screens, constant reliance on screens. There's a huge dig into cosmetic surgery. There are posh doctors using corrosive acid to melt faces younger, and it's cool stuff like that. So I think why I touch on that is the humor is always very cynical. Their technology, there is more convenience than ever, but all the technology is on the fritz. There's always a spin to that.
That's good.
This film, though, was honestly an experience, and I do not say that lightly. I thought long and hard about this, including 2 viewings we did this week. I only did that for one other, which was Crimes of the Future, and that was needed more for retention, kind of understanding what the hell was going on. This was for pure enjoyment, and I don't think this film has any peers. I don't think there's any media that tries to imitate its style, and there's certainly that nothing matches it in tone. There is care, there is detail, there is artistry, and is without a doubt a must watch.
Oh my gosh.
We're going to go ahead and give Brazil an 87.
Whoa, 7?
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
That is okay. That's big boy alert. I had no idea.
Big boy alert. I do. I had big boy alert in my notes. So I was like, all right, I gotta play it sly a little bit.
That is a shock.
It was a shock to me as well.
When was the last time we had an 80? When was the last time we had a big boy alert here? I mean, that's unbelievable.
Maybe Fargo.
That was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Wow, Brazil at an 87%. Okay, folks. Yeah. Watch it.
It's
what you're saying is this, even for the wackiness, for the craziness, even for this dry humor type of thing, this weird dystopian world that we're in, it's still for a huge audience.
I think so, and I think it's because the comedy is so relentless because it's everywhere in the design. So something that I maybe found funny, I think other areas of the film might hit for other people. It's not shoving like jokes and punchlines in your face. Almost every inch of the screen is a punchline in some way.
Right.
And I think there's just such follow through with that.
I freaking love it. That's 87 is great to have.
Absolutely.
You must have been
a happy camper.
Yeah, happy camper watching that. Especially going into it being like, oh, what are we getting here?
Oh, yeah. And that's where I can't stress. I mean, if folks at home, if you think maybe the 87 is generous even after watching this, understand that I was really going in critical, and I was swooned over.
You had your knives out.
Oh yeah,
ready to go.
I was ready to call this, Kane Mutiny.
Yeah, I was going to say the Kane Mutiny effect.
Kane Mutiny syndrome. That's great.
Damn.
So,
okay. That's fantastic.
yeah, it was a great time, and I'm glad we had a weird week to touch on it. Glad I happened to scroll past it on one of my lists. Absolutely,
fit in great in
Absolutely.
this week. With that said, we're going to be jumping ahead here a decent amount. That was 1985. We're jumping to 2020. Again, this is David Cronenberg's son, Brandon Cronenberg. Do we know how many films he's done? Is this basically his biggest?
I think he's done one other feature release, but this is definitely his biggest.
Okay.
Both directing and writing here.
Okay, and this is Possessor. And what do we have with Possessor? How does his son do here, basically?
Yeah, I think it's just it was so cool to have this unique opportunity to not only see the return of Cronenberg as a director for I think like a 10-year hiatus, and not only that, check out his son in his directing and writing. Possessor is definitely an oddball. Like I said, even in the when we were chatting earlier, very reminiscent of early Cronenberg work. I would say probably the best comparison is Scanners specifically.
Okay, which was early pod. If listen to the podcast,
absolutely,
might not sound as good. But.
Yeah, Possessor is a sci-fi thriller. We follow Tessa Voss, played by Andrea Riseborough.
Yep.
She was in Mandy. She was in Birdman. I think she was in Black Mirror. Good actress. She is a future corporate assassin, which is pretty cool. She possesses her hit targets by not only studying them and kind of social engineering them, but then actually using a machine to take control of their body, to possess them directly.
Interesting.
And all of this is used for this kind of world of corporate assassination in the future. It's very, very cool. I love the premise here.
Do we know the year that this is taking place in?
Undisclosed year. Also, the tech itself as well. Some of it's old-fashioned, some of it's new. So definitely kind of the bizarro world effect of definitely all of Cronenberg's work.
Are we in modern? Are we in like the world?
Yes.
Like we're in cities that we know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Vague cities, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, gotcha.
They're probably in Toronto or something like that.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Toronto, the home of corporate assassination. But yeah, it's interesting. The story introduces us with a quick hit and then locks us into the main assassination that for the the rest of the runtime. A lot of time is dedicated to the psychological stress of this possession machine on both sides, who's being possessed and the possessor, which is interesting. What is missing from all this is any kind of religious angle. I mean, you hear possessor and you're thinking, maybe something supernatural or something spiritual. That is completely missing from all this. Yeah,
it didn't pop through my head, but, I'd only known about the film for... half an hour, so
at max. It's a very cool premise, cool as ice, but unfortunately has some really slow pacing in the first hour.
It's only an hour and 43 only.
Yeah, and I mean that the first solid hour. That last 45 minutes is certainly a spiral in a good way.
Yeah,
but that first hour is just very slow. Because the body swap is the whole point. We wind up spending more time with our victim or the hit target as the actor than we do with the actress that is our lead.
With the actual assassin herself.
Exactly.
Okay.
That plays a little bit into performance, but it definitely plays into kind of a disassociation we have with the characters. I don't watching this film, as cool as it is, I don't really give a damn about anyone, and it's primarily because we spend so much time with the hit target. It's a little tough as far as engagement in the script.
Okay,
I believe
definitely a few knocks for that then.
Yeah. And hard to recommend because there's nothing really, you're not really rooting for either side. All sides are kind of real messy, and maybe that's the point of the film. I think that's absolutely has to be, part of maybe the commentary of corporate assassination that this film wants to tackle.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. As far as what we're looking at with this engagement, there's just not enough of a hook to either side. It's also just too slow for its own good. Much in his father's footsteps, the practical effects work is great. We have some interesting psychedelic sequences when they first go into this possession machine with wax work, which was like, when do you see wax being used?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and
that's
it's like
very
melty
cool.
And it's trippy. It's very cool. Also, gore is clock to 11. I mean, this is a gory film. So much so that there's an uncut version that I did briefly check out, and I would say maybe even shy away from the uncut version.
It's that much. It's that heavy duty. It should know all these are rated R.
Yeah.
Well, Mad God doesn't really have much of a rating. To
yeah,
it. It's kind of in this weirdness, but definitely is a rated. Yeah.
More so just disturbing elements.
So the amount of gore in this uncut would potentially be NC-17?
Yeah, there's one scene that I saw is just like, this is a little bit excessive.
It's a little too much,
almost.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that it was cut out then.
Yeah.
Because you want audiences to, continue the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the toxic mix here is that as cool as the visuals are, as the psychedelic, emotional, inner type of sequences that we get with it, very good looking. It's a very good looking film as well. And it obviously understands the premise of this world. It's very creative in this world. But the problem with the gore is that it really just washes over you. There's so much of it. And we have such little engagement with our characters that when maybe like a serious death comes along, we're like, okay, it's just like one of a crazy spiral and
desensitized to it. Yeah.
100% desensitized, and also just not engaged with our characters.
Right,
which I can't say I cared about any of the deaths. I find it very similar to Scanners in that way, that we have a very interesting premise, a world that it creates of its own, but maybe not the biggest ties to what exactly the players on screen are doing. Right. You know what I mean? Like I said, my note is that you just cannot root. Everyone is kind of unredeemable in this film, which is interesting. Again, it's definitely trying to these corporate overlords, these puppeteers to the assassinations. They're definitely bad guys. Yeah. So that is kind of the point. But
everybody's kind of a bad guy.
Yeah, everyone's kind of
which
a bad
is
guy.
very Cronenberg. A
little
bit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. A cool premise, great trippy psychedelics, or even the psychological visuals, I should say more specifically. But it's missing a hook and maybe missing some electricity as well. In ways, I think he's following in the footsteps of his father. It's very enjoyable to watch in its own right, but you're not getting a huge amount of substance. We're going to go ahead and give Possessor a 63.
63, okay, hey, it's out of the 50. I mean, it's a good movie, but very specified for an audience. Yeah, basically, you got to be into this one, or into the genre at least.
There's been some watches recently that I feel like the 60s in general, those 10. It's such a sweet spot for when style is the main highlight of a film and the substance isn't there, because I still think it's a good time. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a great film, though. The style is above average.
Scanners got a 67.
Oh, really?
I'm sorry, 69.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that probably makes sense a little bit.
Yeah.
And a good show for Brandon Cronenberg. And maybe he wants to stand alone on his own and probably hates being compared to his dad constantly.
I'm
but at the same time, you did go and make a movie just like him, kind of.
It's surprising. It really is like a 2020 Cronenberg film.
Yeah, the comparisons are going to happen. Yeah, I mean, you just can't get away from it. Okay, so that's 63% for Possessor. And that wraps up our previously released films, folks. And we're going to move on to our next two now in theaters. But before then, we're going to take a break here just to thank our producer of the show. And we do have a producer, an executive producer, absolutely. And it's a producer we've had before. This is Brandon Beebe coming back again.
He's coming back.
And we thank him so much, Brandon, that he's tried to donate when the site wasn't working.
Right, yep.
And he tried and tried and tried. Then he finally got through, so we appreciate when he was able to get through, and here he is the second time. And his note that he wrote in is actually pretty great. So first he donated $36.
Oh, wow.
So Brandon, thank you for that value.
Absolutely.
He found that valuable and what the value he's getting. He gave back to us, which we thank. But also his note, folks, so last week we had a big episode on Jurassic Park series, and Brandon also read the books, and so he wanted to kind of like shed some light on what the deal is with the books compared to the movies and everything like that. So Vin, you can also help pair things with the movie.
Sure.
But Brandon says, "Hey, here to give you more info on the Jurassic films from someone who read the novels. Hammond, who is played by Attenborough, and the main guy."
Core of it all.
Who created Jurassic Park. Hammond dies in the first novel. The Lost World novel was a rescue mission, and JP3 and stopping Biosyn, the rival company, from stealing the dino eggs in Jurassic Park 2.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
And Biosyn is among many of the corporate ends that want to get in on the dino action, basically.
And then so Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum, has to go to the second island to rescue a friend that is studying the dinos because the Costa Rican government was worried about weird skeletons washing up on shore. That has nothing to do with the movie. Right?
I don't think so. I would like maybe governments getting involved. I think that would be an
but that explains at least why he's involved. Right?
Yes, yeah.
That makes a little bit more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
At the end, they discover the dinos have been eating food with a disease that affects the brain and it shortens their lifespan. This explains why they can build the park in Jurassic World 1 on the original island, the same from Jurassic Park 1. The original park is fenced off, and you see some of it in JW1, which we talked about.
Yes,
you said you see remnants of it.
Yeah.
And he said, last fact, in 1997, both novels, Jurassic Park and The Lost World, were combined together and renamed Jurassic World, a.k.a. the title for your second trilogy, which is...
I love it.
Yeah, we had no idea.
That's great.
Even my research, I saw that The Lost World was like a early 1900s novel, where Jurassic Park was from 1990. So it was another novel, though.
That's great.
So Brandon says, sorry so long, but just shows why books are better than movies. Which,
agreed, absolutely.
well, no, we can't say that. It's a movie podcast here, for God's sakes. But no, long note, no. That was to the point and
perfect, yeah.
Perfect,
informative.
Brandon. Absolutely informative. So, Brandon, we thank you for that note. And we just want to say, obviously, you're getting value from the podcast, and you are, our biggest producer of this show. So we thank you for that, and we appreciate you're getting value enough where you're sending value back to us. Also, folks, if you have a note like this where it's actual content, that alone is you being a producer.
Oh,
so
for sure.
You can reach us at thedailyratings@gmail.com. And so you can email us. And if you have something that you think is important for us to know, or that the listeners or people who listen and other producers get out of this, that's huge. And we're not going to read every single note that anyone emails us because that's not how it works. You have to donate if you definitely want to get it read. But if we think it's valuable, that alone is going for the value for value model.
For sure.
So again, that's what it is. If you're finding value in the podcast and in the website, can you send us some value back? Now, we ask that it's monetary-wise. You go to the donations tab at thedailyratings.com, and you can write in a note and donate. But if you truly just have some information,
sure.
Hey, if you could email us, and we'll read it, man. We'll give you a shout and everything like that. So, Brandon, this is a twofer. You gave us money and a phenomenal content note. So we appreciate you so much for that. You are the executive producer of this episode and a producer of the Daily Ratings as a whole. Brandon, we thank you so much. Again, for folks at home, it's thedailyratings.com. Head to the donations tab. If you like what you're hearing and seeing, please, could you give us back some value?
Yeah. We always talk about watching the movies just for what they are, but sometimes that background knowledge, especially when tying into novels and whatnot, that is valuable.
It is. And we don't have necessarily the time. I can do some stuff on the fly, but, the biggest thing is while we're here, we watch the film and here's what the film's about.
Exactly.
Is it worth your watch or is it not? And here's the score. But getting into the weeds a little bit is great, especially for a big episode like the Jurassic Park series.
Sure. We even touched on it with the Fantastic Beasts episode. I think one of the pluses of that franchise was no novel baggage. So,
right.
But sometimes that can enrich an experience. So I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Brandon, thank you so much for being a producer of this show. For all you other producers or future producers, dailyratings.com to the donations tab. Okay. All right, that's enough with that. Let's move on to our In Theaters Now films, Vin. We're going to start with Mad God. And it's weird.
Such a weird movie.
It's been available to some audiences or festivals or something like that last year in 2021. It's wide release now. Or shouldn't say
Shudder
wide.
release and AMC Plus. Okay. So not exactly premium, but I
more available than what it was before.
Yeah, I think I'd be pulling my hair out if I was PR for this film. So trying to find licensing partners.
Yes.
It's an oddball.
And yes, oddball and no shock here. Didn't really know anything about it.
Yeah,
before we sat down, you were like, "Oh, this film has been worked on for 30 years," which just made my eyebrows go up. What do we have here? What's the whole package we're getting with this?
Yeah.
It's only an hour and 23 minutes.
Right. And it is a stop motion primarily film. I'll get into a little bit of the elevator pitch. We touched on Phil Tippett with Starship Trooper,
right, who's the director.
He's the director
Yeah,
here.
and writer.
Yeah, but Phil Tippett is primarily a special effects guru in the industry. industry. We touched on him with Starship Troopers a few weeks ago with his alien designs, but you name a film past the 70s, he's worked on it. I mean, we're talking Star Wars, RoboCop. He won an Oscar with his work in Jurassic Park. So, I mean, if anything, we've been building oddly enough.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and believe me, that
so
really
he did the close-up dinos that you praised.
Exactly.
Oh, very cool.
Exactly. And recipient of one of the multiple Oscars that film won.
Right.
So,
yeah.
First Jurassic Park, JP won. While on the podcast, I mean, believe me, I really didn't mastermind this, but we've been actually subtly building towards this a little bit. Phil has been making this for 30 years, folks. We get some fringe cases like this in animation every now and again. There's a great anime called Hellsing Ultimate, which has been worked on for like 11 years, but nothing 30. I mean, 30 is like a new high score.
And basically it's the idea of, he has some free time, so he's going to work on it?
Yeah.
Is that like how it is?
I'll get into what I think. I don't know. Overall, I would say this movie feels like a man with toys in his basement. Working for 30 years, but that man also happens to be an Oscar-winning special effects artist.
Okay.
So it's very good, but it does have a very personal pet project feel to it.
Okay.
Honestly, everything is produced here by Phil. We have written, directed. Apparently, he started the work on this on RoboCop 2.
Really?
Which is, that's insane to have something like that and say, oh yeah, I've started it around then.
That is crazy. It is. It's
wild.
Absolutely crazy.
Like I said, there is no big studio behind him here. Shudder currently owns the rights, which Shudder is like a horror-specific add-on streaming service. You can get it added on to things.
Yes.
Yeah. And I believe AMC Plus also has some shared rights. And
so it's not in theaters at all? Or you can see via AMC?
Yes, it is. You can see it via AMC, you can see it versus Shudder, and there's some very limited local theaters. Believe it or not, a theater near us, the Emmaus Theater, was running it on last Friday.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was really its own beast. I don't think you can license this thing normally because of its stop motion, because of how disgusting and horrific and weird. I mean, this is about as fringe as you get with a film, which is
for such a main guy too.
Oh yeah. And that's where I think it's a pet project that like he didn't care about making something digestible.
Right. Okay.
He was making something of designs from the inner reaches of his mind, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
In a way.
And crazy. It sounds like, and kind of looks like from some of the stuff I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. With the background of the way, let's talk about the story a little bit. There is not a single line of dialogue, so that's a great start.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it is. I would say the elevator pitch here, it's almost like Fantasia meets Dante's Inferno. It's Fantasia in the sense that there's a lot of music, there is a lot of visuals, it's about the animation itself. Also, story-wise, we're kind of dipping our toe into different areas. And overall, the structure is kind of going deeper and deeper into hell, or like a hell-like wasteland.
Interesting.
There's a progression to the hellish imagery on screen as we go deeper and deeper. And that's where this Dante's Inferno type of structure comes to mind, because there's definitely a progression to, we're in the eyes of a traveler, a faceless, nameless traveler.
Okay.
That is going in deeper and deeper into this wasteland, and we're just kind of there for the ride and experiencing the horrors around him.
Do we feel connected to the nameless faceless character?
No.
Oh.
Maybe when, there's a moment that he gets tortured as part of the fair that he's around,
right.
And maybe there's some empathy there, but no, there's not really anything attaching to it. The stop motion here is a labor of love. It is using more traditional sets and even a lower frame rate at times to clearly make up for the production of how these figures move along. How much Phil is having to adjust these figures
with every frame. Yeah,
exactly. For that reason, this really can't be compared to something like Leica Studios, who would do like a Kubo or Coraline. It is not modern animation. I think this is both a good and a bad thing, because it is definitely below tech-wise, and I mean like tech of the movie making itself,
Yeah.
is definitely below what I would say as modern stop motion, but it's also like this film feels like it's been made for 30 years. You know what I mean?
It is special.
Yeah.
That's special.
This film has, if I feel that, man, like it feels like he made it around RoboCop 2. There's good and bad there. I hope if that sounds interesting to you, maybe stop motion being used as a specific style, I think this maybe hits on a recommend for folks at home. I can't call it fully stop motion in this Fantasia setup. We're dipping into just different sections of this hell world. And there is some live action mixed in there as well. So it's not fully stop motion.
When it's blended, does it look just out of place and not right? Or he does a good job at blending?
I think that's where some of the amateurish pieces come into play. I mean, I can't really call Phil Tippett an amateur when it comes to stop motion or special effects.
Sure.
But specifically with this lower frame rate the camera's clocked in at, it looks almost like I was wondering what was wrong with the stream. I was almost, wondering what was wrong with the footage itself when real people were on the screen, when actors were. So
looks like a guy did it in his basement.
Yeah, he's just Oscar winning.
Yeah.
But what stands above all comparison is the design in this movie. There is a near constant barrage of gore, hellish imagery, viscera on screen. It is something that honestly has to be experienced on its own, and in a good way, in a very good way. The visual storytelling is there to fill in the complete lack of dialogue as well. Much like a Fantasia. I mean, I'll use something so cliche as like the Mickey Mouse broom sequence. There's a story being told just through the visuals and the music. That is where I compare this to Fantasia in the same way. I mean, visuals, it couldn't be further from Fantasia or Disney. I think Disney would have an aneurysm if they try to put this on streaming. But yeah, definitely not a movie to eat to. In the arms race of most up this week, Mad God surprisingly pulls ahead out of all the movies that we covered. I mean, I really didn't expect Mad God to really pull ahead. So yeah, just be warned. It's not a dinner time family watch, But that's
talk about for a specific audience, right?
Yeah. I think it's very interesting. And more than anything, I was super excited for this film coming out because it is just so out of left field. Not only stop motion, not only the craziest designs you have ever seen on screen, the 30-year, the 30-year plug to it, the perk almost, if you will.
That shines through, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird piece of art. I enjoyed it a lot, though. The detail he puts into this design, it is in every inch of this film. Debris on the ground. The mechanical design. Of course, the creatures are just nightmarish, It's a visual feast. In different ways than Brazil. Brazil, I felt the design was in service to the message and the satire.
Yeah.
This is just like, how can we shock the audience? This is
and
shock
it does
and awe.
just that. Yeah.
This is like I said, a barrage.
But it follows something. It's not just like, it's not laziness, right? It's not just thinking of the most crazy thing and just like, all right, let's do that because it's trying to shock. It's like, there's care. There's very much
there is
deliberate.
theming to the layers of hell.
Gotcha.
For instance, we go from kind of a torture layer of hell to a war-themed layer of hell to a machinery-themed, And maybe I don't want to portray it in that way because that's just my interpretation that they are layers of hell. But it's certainly hellish. Okay. So I mean, I'll challenge anyone to please, folks, write in. Give me a description of Mad God. We'll re-edit the episode.
Yeah.
Almost on that note, I don't think all of it has substance. There is definitely some stuff that is just kind of messed up / cool. There is a great visual storytelling in the world that Phil made, and I think is what's necessary for this to get a positive rating. Because there has to be storytelling, otherwise we're just watching a music video. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
A very expensive 30-year music video, but no, there is storytelling there. I'll end with saying in ways, and much like I kind of hinted at already, in ways this doesn't feel like a real movie.
Okay, sure.
It really feels like just the realized dream of a man playing with toys in his basement. And
who happens to be an Oscar winner.
Puppeteer, animator, visual effects artist. I mean, a legend in the industry. And in that, I really root for this film because go Phil. You know what I mean? He pulled this off.
Yeah,
you know,
it's true.
You don't get to see that too often, and especially don't get to see that in Hollywood, where there's rewrites and re-edits and studio meddling.
That's where it's thank God for all the outlets that we do have. The how easy it is for someone to make a film in a lot of ways is terrible because of all of the crap that's out there.
Oh, for sure.
But then you have things like this that make it through the fold,
exactly,
and fall through the cracks in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That make it down to us. So
yeah,
okay, all right.
I think there's a lot of positive aspect there. I mean, there are certainly segments that I can point to and say, that looks quite amateurish, but there's an oddly personal touch to this. This is like, you know, you go to your uncle's house and he's like, "Hey, I made a movie," and it's shocking and it's visceral and I mean, it's almost beyond description in the ways that I can't really describe every inch of the screen or the animation to it. It really is something that you have to see for your own, and I think it's pretty worth your time for that reason. We're going to go ahead and give Mad God a 77.
Wow. Oh my God. That's a very good score.
I was a happy camper this week.
Would I like this movie?
I don't know. I think
77. Great movie. You should definitely watch it. Maybe not me.
I think I really want to give it that high of a rating because it's such a personal feel. Exactly.
This is art.
Yeah, this is, you can't really call it like a movie, but at the same time, it is Phil's vision. 100%. Unrelenting vision. I think that's worth time if you're in the mood for it. And hey, that's exactly why we like to put the audio to the reviews.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because if someone stumbled upon a 77 on the site, I think this one definitely needs some preface to it. So.
I love it. 77 for Mad God. That's awesome. And a little shout out to Shudder, which if you are a horror fan, I think Shudder is a great service, right?
Absolutely.
The first time I heard it was like years ago from Elijah Wood.
Oh, really?
He was, not personally, obviously. Maybe one day doing this. But no, he was like talking.
For the Lord of the Rings episode.
Yeah, he loves horror. Elijah Wood
of course.
loves horror, but I remember he was really promoting Shudder when it first became a thing. So if anyone's into horror, maybe check that out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're gonna go to our last film, the one I'm most interested. The only movie I really know anything about on this whole freaking list.
You have been lost without a paddle.
But my boy's in this, Speaking of Lord,
here we go. Speaking of Lord of the Rings,
Viggo Mortensen is in. Lea Seydoux, who we know as Bond girl, our girl Kristen Stewart,
terrible.
who we're always rooting for. And this is our 2022 release. This just came out. This is Crimes of the Future. David Cronenberg, really out of retirement.
Oh, yeah, fully.
Most of Hollywood basically assumed he was out. Well, he kind of said he was like done with making movies. He's in his late 70s?
I think so. I don't know age, but
mid to late 70s, I think.
A 10-year hiatus, basically.
Yeah. And this is Crimes of the Future. What do we have in?
Oh, man, this might be the most Cronenberg movie he has ever made. And there's something triumphant about that. To come back from this hiatus and make something that is so Cronenberg. I mean, I'll maybe make some comparisons to other artists and auteurs in this review, but man, there's a satisfaction in kind of seeing that. And talk about striking at the right vein. Doing a Cronenberg study early on the podcast. I did not plan for that at all.
Yeah. So people go back and listen to those because we did. We went through a lot of Cronenberg.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I enjoyed this movie for how messed up it was, but more than ever, this type of movie from him is not for all audiences. I'm very positive with this rating, but there is a I don't want to say trigger warning. I don't like the word trigger warning, but it's there's definitely, I mean, it's gore. It's heavily rated R. So I don't want to really summarize this movie at all. I think there is a surprising amount of answers we get from this film.
Okay.
There's not really hand-holding, but most audiences will walk away from this with a good understanding of a very science fiction world. And a good understanding of the overarching plot and how this world operates. So I don't want to summarize it because believe me, half, if not more, of the enjoyment is experiencing the very particular world that Cronenberg has crafted with Crimes of the Future. It is a brand new vision of the future. This is new sci-fi. This is how Dune was new sci-fi. This is new sci-fi. No one's done this type of style before. It is.
How refreshing is that?
Oh, so amazing.
Especially you always on the hunt for new sci-fi. Interesting sci-fi. How do you mix it up? This is mixing it up, you'd say.
Yeah. I was so happy.
To come from Cronenberg. You know, after, Tarantino says you have 10 films in you and then you're done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I kind of agree with that.
And for this guy to come back, he does have another movie slated, by the way. Something has been triggered with him, for sure.
He's got to get that money, get that check.
I want to ask you something. I don't know if you thought about this much. So you say this might be the most Cronenberg movie and everything like that, the way it is. I'm interested because we're watching in the here and now. I wonder what you'd say if you grew up with him and saw The Fly for the first time or saw some of those other movies for the first time. Would it have the same effect? And is it just him and that's what he does consistently, which is on its own impressive? Or do you really think that this is the most Cronenberg he's ever been?
I think so.
Which is even more so doubly impressive.
Yeah, the tech is just, no one's touched on this style. It's without peer. And again, there's a surprising amount of answers to why the world is so weird, you know? In the film, it really does give us almost a huge amount of exposition and dialogue to get us up to speed on why the hell the world is like this. So a part of that, and instead of summarizing, the best thing I can do is kind of put some training wheels on this film.
Because like you said, you watched it twice.
Yes. This was a twice in theater, and partly because, this was getting knocked around from Maverick to Jurassic World. How did
it's
this
getting
even
lost in the
survive?
shuffle.
Yeah.
Not that it was supposed to be a blockbuster.
Right.
When this first came in, Cannes was the first to preview this, and my understanding was, I was reading reports right away, in the first 5 minutes of this film, you had audience members walking out.
Yes.
However, at the end of the film, it got like a 7-minute standing ovation.
Wow, 7 minutes.
Something like that. Yeah,
That's
I think
wild.
it was. I think it was 7 minutes.
Wild.
So that just goes to show the polarizing of the film.
Yes.
And to your point in the very beginning, this isn't for all audiences. But if you are a member who should see this, you're getting a treat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'll speak to that as well. In both of my watching in theaters, I've had 2 groups of people walk out. You know?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, the beginning is just very weird, and that's not when the explanations are. The explanations come later of why it's all weird.
Gotcha.
But the beginning is definitely, we're diving in. So,
he's putting you right in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, best thing I can do is give a little bit of training wheels to the plot. This movie is around human evolution, specifically pain receptors in our bodies becoming obsolete. A big theme here is that human evolution is going wrong. It's not going to plan. It's I wouldn't say mutated, but I guess in the scientific terms, it is mutations. You know, this single factor really has a cascading effect on human society that it really makes a very provocative world. Humans without pain, our experience around pain has become almost novel. It's almost become an artistry to it. We follow Vigo and Leo Seydoux as performing artists, and that's really self-described, but performing artists.
Interesting.
Around the absence of pain. And I would say, this style, it is nightmarish dystopia. Dystopia probably could be associated with each one of these films we talked about this week.
Are the characters aware that it's nightmarish?
How weird it is?
Yeah. Or is it meant to present the future to you, so it's weird for us?
Yes. I think one of the best things is the characters really feel like they're part of the world, so they do not have shell shock. They are
it's not nightmarish to them. It's just life.
It's just life. And I think that's where we get the walkout effect, because it's how are they all right with this?
Okay, okay, gotcha.
So that's where the walkout is happening, is our characters are good with this? Okay.
Okay.
Got it. But yeah, the extreme body horror paired with a kind of an art house society. A lot of people are performing artists in this world. There's almost it's very future and sci-fi because it's almost post-scarcity. It doesn't seem like people need money. It doesn't seem like people care about progression. They care about art and they care about performance, and it's very bold for that reason. I enjoyed it a lot for that.
Wow.
But it sells its own world. Best comparison? Videodrome. In just the same way that you're like, when in human timeline did we slip down the Cronenberg crazy path?
Right.
That's what you're wondering about this world as well. Like, when did it go wrong? Huh? I don't know.
And I think you told me this, or maybe it was just research. He has wanted to do this film for almost since the very beginning. He has always wanted to do this, but he wanted to wait because I think the tech wasn't there yet, or to actually give it to the audience wasn't there.
Sure.
It's always just something he's always wanted to do, apparently.
I could imagine it's very provocative.
Yeah.
It's a very it's its own thing. And I think that's where if that's true and that goes into Cronenberg,
it makes sense.
Props to him. I mean, this movie is one for the creators this week,
So the characters and everything like that, how you're saying they're almost like performative, it's all about art. Does this almost seem like futuristic human circus stuff? Like
maybe.
Almost like, hey, check out the amazing
there is definitely kind of an outdoing each other in the the stakes of the performance. I think that's a good way to describe it. Very dark, dark circus certainly, but it's very interesting for that reason. I would say just to give maybe some idea of the type of nightmarish dystopia. Again, I really do believe this film is without comparison, but you do have some reminiscent design of Clive Barker, who did the Hellraiser series.
Okay.
There's a similar type of intensity to what is shown on screen that reminds me of Clive Barker's work. And like I said, much like Cronenberg's earlier work like Videodrome, it's something that you're just drawn into the story for the sheer curiosity of how the world is this nightmarish. And how our characters are all right and products of this world. I think one of my favorite things about the acting, and against all odds, specifically for why can't I remember? Kristen Stewart, is that these characters feel like products of the world. They're weirdos. They're freaks.
And they fit.
Oh, yeah.
They're selling it.
They fit in a good way.
And you say against all odds because we're always rooting for Kristen Stewart. But she doesn't always make it. She did do Spencer.
Yes, Spencer was good. Spencer was good.
But how are all three of our main casts here?
Yeah, Vigo is great. We actually get, like I said, I'm surprised how many answers we get out of the story. Vigo, he's kind of doing a detective noir thing. He's an artist, but he's interested in the world and how it's developed as well for his art. So a lot of the sequences, a lot of the script is dedicated to Vigo going around, meeting new people, and not that he hasn't lived in the world for the whole time, but we're kind of at a turning point for all of this coming to a head. And equally how people are interested in Vigo's performance art, he's interested in how the world is developing in response to his performance art.
I love how deep that. I love how deep it goes. Okay.
And it really is like a detective noir. If I had to, probably the one backbone of normalcy is that it's set up that Vigo is going around interviewing and getting big blocks of exposition.
It kind of makes sense. I can understand why he was picked for this. One, they worked together on, what did they do 15 years ago?
Eastern Promises, and a few others, I believe, as well.
Really?
He had like a trilogy that he did, unofficial trilogy, but like,
but it makes sense because Vigo's overall like demeanor and kind of his silence a little bit, or just how he is in real life. I can see how he might be good at a character like that. And we have Lea Seydoux, who is really
phenomenal.
Getting role after role she's getting lately, which is I love. She's great.
Probably plays her most normal character too, and refreshing because she's kind of our life raft when things get a little wild. Because you can see. Even when we get into the weirdest, she's the one like turning her head away and whatnot, and it's very refreshing. She's a character I wanted to see on screen because I knew we were getting
we were safe. We were safe.
Dose
with
of normalcy.
Life Raft is a great character. We should use that term more for
exactly. So, but I think my note across the board with the acting is that there's I want to give it so much credit because for how weird the film is, or rather the world of the film is, these characters feel like products of it. They are all weird. They are all, very oddly antisocial. Again, I would have to do a deep dive on the style to understand why they're a product of it, but know that the actors are doing a phenomenal job in trying to imagine what their characters would be like in this world.
Right.
So that's for Viggo, that's for Léa Seydoux, and that's definitely for Kirsten.
And those, you would say, main three.
Yes.
They're on there, the biggest percentage on screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple other supporting. There is a concept of I don't know if I want to go into that deep.
No, don't. No,
okay,
don't.
all right, yeah. I'll stay away from it. But yeah, there's some cool other characters.
Okay, but the main three that's really good. Mm-hmm. The fact that you had these three main characters all holding their end, at least what it sounds like.
Yes, and definitely those are the
good.
ones worth the praise of products of the environment,
yeah.
Or the environment of the film. Mm-hmm. So. Sadly, I think what maybe holds the movie back a little bit is the writing and script. There's a lot of technobabble. Technobabble is them throwing out a term that kind of means nothing. It's just kind of filler and actually just being an entry for exposition around the world, details of just how do we get up to speed with the world.
Okay, all right.
Luckily, it really gets us up to speed in an extremely bizarre world. Like I said, there's a surprising amount of answers we get, cold cut answers to this film of why things are the way they are.
Which I like.
And I think we need it because otherwise it'd be like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
So
almost like there's really no payoff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think from a writing perspective, it is a touch weaker for me. I think I'd be a lot more positive on the film if it just had a little bit less. Almost every scene, especially with this detective style of Viggo going around and talking to people, it's a person in the day of their life in this crazy world throwing out a concept for Viggo. Viggo says it back with a question mark, and we get a block of dialogue explaining that.
It's very simple structure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's...
You want more from Cronenberg.
Yeah. It's a little bit amateurish as far as the writing itself. That said, I think it gets a pass for me because not only did I enjoy finding out about the world, I think it's in service to
deeply necessary.
Yeah, exactly. There is almost a necessity for us to have an understanding so that then a dramatic story can play out within the confines of this very, very sci-fi world.
Okay,
this very misunderstood sci-fi world. So, yeah. That said, I would say Cronenberg's vision of the future is stunning, unrelenting, horrifying, visceral. I feel like I've repeated myself a lot with the movies we covered this week, but Cronenberg really brought it home in a big way. I can't stress enough. I obviously didn't use the 10 years just to create this film, but it feels like momentum for Cronenberg, which I really like.
The end of his career, but he's not. That's the best. Wow.
Exactly. So,
wow.
Clumsy in writing or not, I was still fascinated with unpacking the world he created. And I think creating this noir story within the eyes of an artist is also unique to the film style as well. This was a movie I was dying to see again. I did see it again, and I'm glad I saw it twice this week in theaters. We're going to go ahead and give Crimes of the Future an 82.
Wow, an 82%. Mm-hmm. A great score. I can't tell you how happy I am
the
to see this
highest rating
score.
Cronenberg.
That's right. It absolutely is. How crazy is that?
Oh, yeah.
Again, not that it's not like I don't want to knock the guy because he's old or anything like that. You can obviously still make great products, but he's been in the game for so long. He stepped away from the game for a while and then come back with this. And again, I think it was just he's been wanting to do it for years.
Yeah.
Whatever struck a chord with him now to do it. Awesome.
Yeah. And again, it is maybe not a must watch, but an 80s, great movie.
It's a great movie.
Great movie just for how bold the sci-fi vision is.
And I bet you would say, again, maybe not for all audiences.
Oh, for sure.
But you said the training wheels were helpful.
Yeah.
You're going to see some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And some stuff that is disturbing enough where we, as said, audiences walk out of this. But definitely you say stick it out.
I say stick it out. And again, this isn't like when we covered Men that I was like, oh, there's no answers here. No, I was
thinking about that when
and there was that being unsatisfying as well.
Yeah.
There was a satisfaction because you walk away and kind of have not encyclopedic knowledge, but pretty good baseline knowledge of how this sci-fi world works.
So what it really comes out, if you have a real issue with seeing weird body stuff, stay away from it.
Exactly.
Okay.
If any of Cronenberg's prior works is not your bag,
very true.
Then that's a perfect benchmark.
Wow, an incredible week, Vin. This was
one for you, one for me.
No, this was a week for the fans as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is awesome.
Yeah, I was real happy with this week, and more than anything, I mean, very sci-fi heavy. This was kind of representative of the old days, where Tom and I were just on the couch and I was going over movies I wanted to watch. I sought out to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in that ways, it was refreshing.
And look at these fantastic scores, Vin.
Yeah.
So before we wrap things up here, is anything else you want to add, Vin, or are we going to roll credits here?
I don't think so. I mean, again, more than anything, I was happy to kind of get a nugget of what the podcast was pre-podcast. What this idea was. And it was just me watching a lot of sci-fi.
Which is fine though, especially with the array of weirdness we have and everything like that. So,
absolutely.
Vin, we thank you so much for stopping by. And folks at home, I want to make one more pitch just because Vin won't say it, but I'll say it for him.
Oh boy.
No, it's the fact that you can't say that time is not going into this, not just to sit down for the podcast or get it on the site and everything like that. 5 movies a week is a lot, and yet we really do love movies here, and Vin really does. He watched 2 of these 2 more times. So the passion of the movies are here. If you disagree with the scores, you can't say the thought and the consideration at least wasn't put into them. We're not slapping ratings around all over the place. We're not going to put up a rating on the first week a movie comes out and then change it a week later, 2 weeks later, like some other rotten places do.
Measure twice, cut once.
Right. So I just want to also give that pitch again. If you're getting value from this, could you also show us some value? Vin, thank you so much for stopping by. Folks, we're going to run it through one more time. We have The Man Who Fell from Earth with a 68%, Brazil with an 87%, Possessor with a 63%, Mad God with a 77%, and we finish it off with Crimes of the Future with an 82%. So, folks, we thank you so much for listening and producing, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. You'll get a producer mention on the next podcast episode, too. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast.